Yeah.
Is it recording?
Yeah.
Oh, it's already recording.
Hey guys, I'm McKeever here with Michael Rosehart, and today we're going to be doing a different type of video, one where we're just going to be kind of going through one or two quizzes on are you ready to retire? And so as a little bit of background, both myself and Michael have already reached financial independence, so we just kind of want to go through one of these quizzes that claims to let people know if they're ready to retire and agree or disagree with it. And so as a little bit of background about Michael.
Hey, yeah, so I can't give you guys the whole story in this one video because it would probably take an hour.
Yeah.
But to give you a synopsis, I'm going to be 25 shortly. I'm financially independent. Most of my current sources of passive income are real estate related. I worked, since I graduated from school, I went to the University of Western Ontario for business and then Richard Ivey School of Business after that. I worked my way up from my first property at 19 to now I have 12 properties currently. I'm searching towards financial freedom, and I feel like I'm not really retired yet, but I'm technically financially independent by what you refer to in the mustachian world as the 4% rule.
And so yeah, we're both big believers in the 4% rule, and that's essentially just the safe withdrawal rate that I've talked about a bunch on different videos in my YouTube channel, so you can check that out on the card up there. But otherwise, I think a lot of people make it out to be a way more complicated subject matter if and when you're ready at the crossover point, and there is no like exact defined moment where it's going to click for you, but you kind of know once you really get into this whole ecosystem. And so we both, I think, originally discovered financial independence through Early Retirement Extreme, Jacob Lund-Fisker's blog. And so yeah, so anyways, let's get into it and we'll compare our perspectives on financial independence. So this one here is going to be a moneysense.ca are you ready to retire quiz, and so I'll put a link down below in the video description. But so it's a 10-question quiz, and the first one is, you own a paid-for home. So their little description here is, everybody needs a place to live, but when you're mortgage free, you can use money previously earmarked for home payments in a variety of ways. And then they go on to what you could use that money that was previously earmarked for, how you could spend it, so travel or other living costs and stuff like that. So Michael, you need your house paid off, right, in order to be retired? That was the first thing you did?
That's funny. Yeah, no, I don't own my house outright. In fact, it's levered up. Typically 80% loan to value is what I strive for. You don't need to own it. You could rent and be financially independent. You could be maxed out on your house and be financially independent. It's definitely not a requirement.
Yeah, and realistically, I don't know if it's maybe because both of us have a business background, but like, I don't see household debt like your mortgage as this big, dangerous thing. To be honest, it's a liability versus the asset. And if your assets outweigh your liabilities to a large enough degree, you're going to be able to create passive income off of the difference. And so, for example, often like your personal residence is going to be some of the cheapest debt you're going to be able to get a hold of, right? Now, it's not going to be the most tax efficient debt, but there's different ways to even game that with a HELOC and the Smith maneuver or cash damming. But yeah, I completely agree. There's absolutely no reason you need paid for home. None of my properties are completely paid off. I have a mortgage on every property. And from my perspective, it actually makes more sense because by having some leverage, you can actually control a larger asset base, which inherently creates a bit more of a diversified income stream. Even if it is still going to be all real estate, it's still mildly more diversified.
Definitely. In fact, I'd almost argue, if we're looking at these 10 questions to determine, if I was reading this article and I was someone like, oh, I'm a 50-year-old man, I'm not sure if I should retire. Let me go to moneysense.ca and see what they have to say. The first question being, you own a paid off home. Let's say I own my house outright.
Yeah.
Let's say this last 10 years I've been paying down my house aggressively.
And that's been your sole focus.
That's been my sole investment, my sole focus. In fact, I've been earning like 2% rate of return because I've been effectively saving that 2% that I would have paid in interest. Your home creates, in most cases, and some people rent out rooms in their house, and but in the majority of people who live in their primary residence, they don't earn any cash flow from it. It's not an income stream.
Yeah.
So actually investing a large sum of money, let's say you have a $400,000 house or something, which in Toronto would be nothing, a crack shack, but let's say in a smaller market like London, Ontario, you had some kids or whatever, and you had a $400,000 house, which is pretty typical, pretty average. If you owned your home outright, you probably, more likely than not, if that was your sole focus, you aren't ready to retire at all.
Yeah.
In fact, probably have no cash flow.
Because you've probably neglected creating passive income completely to pay down that debt. And it's one of those things where if you're going to do nothing, yes, paying down that debt's better than doing nothing, but it's definitely not the most optimal or ideal solution to reach financial independence as early as possible. And so another funny thing is about even just this idea of having a paid off home, pretty soon both myself and Michael, who we both consider ourselves financially independent, I'm going to be moving into one of my income properties into one of my units, and he's actually going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm so excited. You can see we're actually shooting in the basement of my house, which is torn apart because there's mud on the walls where the paintings used to be. But this house here is a 4-bath, 4-bed plus a second living room upstairs, 2-car garage. Way too much, something I didn't need, right? And I could have funneled a lot of my assets into paying off this house and be completely, house mortgage free on my primary residence. That would be a terrible decision. If someone came to me and was like, hey, I own my house outright, I'd be like, are you sure that's what you want to do? And have you really thought that strategy? Maybe you could actually pull out some of that equity and invest it in something that produces cash flow.
Yeah, and that's fine. That would be my first suggestion too. If someone told me they had a paid off house, I'd be like, okay, great, let's borrow some money against that asset now.
Let's produce some cash flow. But you brought that up, that interesting point about and I'm moving to my duplex that I own, like you said, because that basically, and I'm gonna have a mortgage on that property because it's a write-off and a number of other reasons. But the other apartment pays the mortgage entirely and the property taxes. Yeah. So I'm living there for the cost of utilities. That's house hacking.
Yeah, exactly. And the cost of that duplex is actually less than your single family McMansion, right? Like it makes a huge,
It's an easy decision. Guys like Triple M though, like the Mustachian, a lot of people in the Mustachian forums argue for a paid off home.
Yeah.
And I can see the merit, you can sleep at night knowing you have no mortgage payments.
And I think it really just comes down to how lean of a fire you're aiming for, right? So if you're trying to retire as soon as possible, being comfortable with debt or leveraging is going to be very important, I think, to growing your passive income.
I agree.
In general, question number 1, we don't agree that you need to own a paid for home. So question number 2, you have a workplace pension plan. So roughly 32% of Canadians have a workplace pension plan, of which a smaller percentage have a defined benefit pension plan. So this almost defeats its own argument, right? If it's saying only 32% of Canadians have a pension plan, does that mean only 32% of Canadians are allowed to retire?
No. Do you have a pension plan?
No, I have no pension.
I have no pension plan either.
Along with apparently 68% of other Canadians.
So definitely not a requirement. In fact, as time goes on, we've seen that interest rates in the 80s and the 70s made it conducive for organizations to offer the defined benefit pension plan where they would guarantee a certain percentage of income. That's going away. More and more. We'll see that number drop probably at 10% or 5%. And I think more and more we're going to start seeing this movement of people retiring early and following the minimalist type of approaches and the Mustachian type of approaches. So I think definitely not required. You don't even need an RRSP to be financially independent.
Absolutely. And realistically, like you said, defined benefit pensions are almost extinct now, and they probably will be in 2 decades. Number 2.
That said, though, if you have one, as you're watching, contribute the max to that because the employer's going to match you. Where are you going to get 100% return on your investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So number 3 is you're 65 and qualify for CPP, OAS, and possibly GIS. So obviously neither of us are going to qualify for any of that. Again, this is, I think, really just rooted in the idea of once you hit a certain age, you're allowed to retire. Which realistically, I don't understand why your retirement would be defined by age at all, right?
Yeah, there's no requirement. There's no age requirements at all. There's also no requirement to have CPP, OAS, or GIS benefits.
And
they might even be there more that age. Who knows?
For you, you're talking
40
about
years.
40 years.
Yeah, who even knows where Canada's going to be in 40 years? Are we going to be amalgamated in the United States? Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to know that. So then question number 4, you have $700,000 in savings. So this one is kind of a no-brainer according to Money Sense. They're including it because some people seem to think they need no less than $1 million to retire. And I guess Money Sense did a series of surveys that determined $625,000 is what people need to reliably retire. You want to start?
Yeah, sure. I can poke at that. they chose an arbitrary number, like 700,000, or a couple needing 625,000. Okay, where do you just pull a number like that from?
Yeah.
If I had to guess, it's probably from a survey based on average people's income, which is, that's the wrong way to go about determining whether you're ready to retire. You know that.
Yeah.
Calculated is.
So yeah, like as we mentioned before, we're really all about the safe withdrawal rate, but realistically too, each retirement's so situational that it's nice to have a really easy number that you can just point to and say that that's what's necessary for everyone, but it's completely unrealistic. In London, Ontario versus living in Vancouver or Toronto and just like everywhere in between, your cost of living is so significantly different, as well as the sort of different free amenities that could be available to you in your community. So it's really, this is insane. Realistically, what you want to do is probably count on 25 or 30 times your annual spending or 300 times your monthly spending, something like that. That'll give you a lot more certainty compared to just a big round number. Because also $700,000 in cash, what's that going to do for you? Right?
Yeah, what's a savings? But yeah, weird that, like, what would you do with cash?
Yeah.
Right? It would need to be invested in some cash flowing producing asset like real estate or equities or bonds or some type of instrument.
Okay, and then so question number 5, your children are financially stable and independent. So one of the fastest ways to not worry about that, in my opinion, is not to have children. But Michael does, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I have a 15-month-old daughter, and we may even have another. So it's definitely not a requirement. You can have children and be financially independent. If you're bringing in passive income sources that are greater than your expenses,
yeah, it's no different than having a job.
Right? I mean, my real estate portfolio, for instance, produces 3 to 4 times what I need a month to live. So, I could effectively even sell off some of my properties or diversify into stocks and bonds and still be financially independent with a family, right? And a lot of people argue, the common misconception I think in society is that, with kids you need to spend $1,000 a month on your child and put them in all of these types of activities or whatnot. I could sum it up in this, like there was like a quote and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something like, your children aren't expensive, you make your children expensive or something to that effect.
I think they cost as much as you want them to cost. Yeah. And so it's really up to you. But I think you mentioned in the past before, you actually have another interesting idea on this. We don't need to get completely into it, but the idea of your children needing to be financially stable. You kind of came up with a long-term plan to help create stability for your children, right, and future generations.
Yeah. There's some line of thought around, I do a lot of reading on this because I think about, what's next now that I've reached financial independence. What's the next logical step? And it's to make sure that my offspring and my children hopefully grow up to be financially stable individuals. One way to ensure that wealth translates beyond generations, I think the most effective way to do that is to create a sort of, I think this is what you're getting at, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sort of creating this chart, let's say, if you would imagine, wherein I wouldn't necessarily give all of my wealth straight away to Emma, right?
Yeah.
I would, Emma's my daughter, or if I had a son or like that, I wouldn't give it straight to them. What I would do is put it in a trust at birth for them, about $18,000, $20,000.
Yeah, and so just 18 to 20,000. We're not talking about a huge fortune.
Yeah, if you let's just play this out, right? So if you put 18,000, let's say you're a grandparent, and you have a grandchild right now, and you put $18,000 at birth into that child's trust or some sort of vehicle, and you invested in basically 95% equities, 5% bonds split. What you'll find is that by the time they're 18, it's already $85,000. By the time they're 55, it's $3.5 million.
Yeah.
So the power of compounding interest at roughly 7 to 8%. You just paid for their retirement. You put $18,000 in the child's fund at birth, and they don't have to ever save for retirement. They're guaranteed to be wealthy.
Yeah. So you've essentially avoided all the fears of question number 5 about not having financially stable children.
Exactly. If you just put $18,000 at birth, and you have to adjust obviously for the age of your child. So if your child's 10 or something now, you'd have to put in maybe 30 or 40,000 or something, because money tends to double every so often, right? And if you actually follow the charts that show like the compounding periods over time, you'll see that the first 4 doubles are the most important.
Yeah.
So exactly. Yeah. So the longer you have in time, the greater the investment is going to be. So it's just about starting early and using time as your ally.
Yeah. But again, completely not necessary to have your children be completely financially stable, but if that is important to you, there are relatively easy solutions you can implement that don't have to be that costly.
Imagine if I had, for instance, just like pause for a second. Imagine if I had my daughter was 18 or something, and I was in my 40s, and I could say, well, I can't retire because question number 5, my child is financially independent. Well, there are like several different lines of thought you could go down. One, you could say my child should pay for their own education. It would teach them, a lot more than paying for them. They would respect it and they would earn it the same way I had to. I'm almost of the mind that maybe my daughter should have to pay for her own education by working hard, and then she'll not feel entitled. The other line of thought is too, you could just say, think of it in a different way. So you could say, well, my child's going to school, but I need to be able to pay their living costs when they go to school. You could go take some of your assets out of your house, for instance. Let's say you're question number 1, you're paid off house. Pull off some equity from there, right? Borrow it at 2%. Go buy 2 rental properties. In fact, buy one for your daughter as she goes to school so she can live for free and house hack.
And she can even maybe manage it for you. And
it'll teach her. There's so many benefits, right? And then buy a second one next door or somewhere where you live now and use that cash to pay for her tuition. Boom, you just became financially independent by reallocating the assets you already had.
Yeah, I completely agree. And far too many people use their children going off to post-secondary education as an excuse to not even analyze their situations, not really dig into what's possible. And as Michael was saying, that just with some reallocation of assets and reprioritizing things, you could easily achieve that. So question number 6, you've test-driven a realistic retirement budget. So according to BMO study, the average retiree spends $2,400 a month, with $670 of that going towards accommodation. So try living on that amount for 6 months. I'm going to jump on this one.
Go for it.
I completely agree with this, but in a slightly different way than I think how they're framing it. So absolutely, you need to know what you're going to spend in retirement, without a doubt. That's the only way the 4% rule is going to work for you. You can't have a safe withdrawal rate without knowing your burn rate. So I completely agree with that. But realistically, I think the way a lot of people approach financial independence, retiring early, is it's not an actual sacrifice. You're not going to be like stepping down your lifestyle. It's the lifestyle you've always been living, and you're just going to continue to live that. So simply by tracking your expenses while striving towards financial independence and adjusting for, say, work costs and maybe work benefits, that'll quickly fill in that picture for you. So I do agree, you should be tracking your expenses. I mentioned it on other videos on my channel. But what are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, I'm actually really impressed that they say the average retiree spends like $20 a month.
But like they're talking about like 70-year-old spinsters, right? Like they're thinking like someone that can't even physically move. That's my fear, is the way they're approaching it.
I have to agree with that first part of that $2,400 a month. I mean, I live on $2,400 a month with a family of 3. So I tend to agree with the figure they've cited there. I agree with you, Matt, that you need to test drive before you just jump off before you quit your job. Make sure you're at least auditing your spending, so you have an idea of how much you're spending. Again, I think that this is pretty sound advice. You should test drive a realistic budget. You should know what you're spending. If you've been spending at a level, it's like, hey, I'm spending all of my income. You're going to do that test and be like, okay, I'm definitely not ready to retire because I'm spending all of my income. I haven't created enough passive income to match that, so I'm clearly not ready to retire yet.
Good work, Money Sense. Number 6. I completely agree.
Pass.
Pass. Number 7, you can weather a market downturn. So young investors should welcome market downturns because they offer bargain buying opportunities with a long time horizon for growth. Retirees, on the other hand, need almost immediate access to their money and can't necessarily afford to wait for their investments to bounce back. So as far as this train of thought goes, yes, you theoretically need to be able to weather a market downturn, but things like the 4% rule or a Monte Carlo simulator will essentially factor that in. So you're already kind of prepared to weather a market downturn. Michael touched upon this earlier as well, though. Like the first few years of your financial independence, retire early journey, those are the most critical. If you get through those first 3, 5, 10 years, if you're retiring for say 40 plus, if you get those in line and you stay on track there, it's going to be really difficult for you to fall off after that, based on my understanding.
Yeah, you got a great point there. The question itself, whether you can just survive a market downturn, I don't know if I love that question, because how do you know whether you're going to retire into a market downturn? How do you know whether or not you're going to be able to survive the downturn? The only way to really know, I think, is to basically have some sort of emergency fund or something set aside, such that, or another stream of income, or something that, the idea being that if you were to withdraw from, the first 2 years of a recession, that could devastate the portfolio, like you mentioned.
But the beauty is too, often most of these retirement quizzes and retirement articles, they take it as a very binary choice. You're retired or you're not. You're employed. But often, if it turns out 2018 is the biggest recession that Canada's ever seen, we're not just going to burn through our money. We're going to either adjust our spending, try and increase our passive income, maybe develop some active income sources, right? And you don't have to be static in retirement. You can constantly be dynamic and change things up based on the situation.
Exactly. There's several levers you can pull on, but one of them, you can just decrease your spending a little bit.
Yeah.
You say, I'm going to be really frugal through this downturn and trying to make it through.
Yeah.
Same as every other Canadian's doing. Everyone's tightening their belt. It's a great point you make about being able to earn that income. In fact, I've been playing on the simulator myself recently and testing different scenarios, because I'm very conservative, right? Because I have a daughter, maybe that's why I am, and I have a family. I don't want to let them down, so I want to make sure that I have a 99.9% chance of never having to go back to full-time employment. So for me, this question, it actually isn't a bad question. Before you retire, you should ask yourself, could I survive a market downturn? Whether I would use their description, I think
that's where we probably get stuck up on, just because it makes it sound like you probably have to be prepared for the 1930s all over again, and I don't think you really need to be, because if our economy changes that drastically, everyone else around you experiences as well, and there's still the classic saying, that bulls and bears make money, but pigs get slaughtered. Where you can make money in any market, it's just a matter of keeping your head. So question number 8, you have varied sources of income. So almost impossible to argue with that.
I think that's sound advice.
It's something that one could argue that maybe we haven't done a good enough job of, because both of us do have the vast majority of our passive income developed through real estate assets that are geographically all located in one Canadian city. Though even then, whether this is rationalization, justification, or logic, it's not like it's all just in one physical asset. It's actually spread out over multiple properties and even different classes of renters and different things like that, which do even build in a little bit of resiliency. But I know that I have been starting to focus on really building out my TFSA and my RSPs and trying to develop some more dividend passive income that route. What are your thoughts on?
I think you need to ask yourself this question. I'd rewrite the question, do you have varied sources of income? To determine whether you're retired. At least think through it. I think before I quit my job mid-March there, I did a lot of soul searching, and I've been through hundreds of these articles, so and I'll even read the ones that are bad and just take out the nuggets that are valuable. And varied sources of income is very important. I think I came up with 12 or 15 sources on a piece of paper. I fleshed out, what happens if the real estate market blew up tomorrow? Could I come up with sources of income that could reach my, my basic level of needs through things like reselling items on Kijiji, or freelance writing, or different things that I could do? And you probably did the same thing.
I built up all kinds of things, the Kijiji reselling, as well as I thought, Airbnb. In the summer, I could camp in my backyard and Airbnb my house, right? And that would help create some more passive or semi-passive income. And there's all sorts of really interesting, clever things. You could also consider house sharing. You could go for 4 months or a year to some other country where the cost of living is significantly lower, meanwhile subletting out your own personal residence. There's all sorts of ways. I think the key here is just really be creative, right? And you don't even need to be actively engaging all these varied sources of income, but just knowing that they're available to you and kind of staying on top of that, I think, is important.
Someone like myself ties into question 8 and question 7 together. I prepared for the worst case scenario. I wanted to be so sure that I would never have to go back to work when I made this decision. And I want to make sure that I had my rental income covered my expenses. I'd like to have my ETF portfolio bringing me passive dividends and cash flow that covered my one times my living expenses. I'd like to have some sort of passive business that brings in some sort of 1 times my income. I like to have 8 times my income, which is like 8 times the safety net that I actually need to guarantee.
Yeah,
right?
And the only thing with that is though too, you don't want to get too hung up on that, in my opinion, because they have this. It's very frequent in the early retirement community. It's called the 1 more year syndrome, where people just keep pushing like 1 more year. Once I get down to a 2% safe withdrawal rate, then I'll know I'm really, really, really safe. And truth be told, you're never truly 100% safe. There's no 100% guaranteed plan. So you just need to get to a point of relative comfort, and then that's where I think mapping out all your various options in a worst case scenario, that'll provide you the comfort. You can even have your doomsday plan, throw it in your safe, and like if things really fall apart, then you crack it open and start engaging it. But don't use the fear of what if to hold you back and keep you working for another 10 years unnecessarily. Because like you talk about wanting to build the most or relatively resilient plan, but at the same time you could have easily stuck around for another 30 years building 10 times more resiliency, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, you eventually have to make a choice, right? And it comes down to a lifestyle decision. Am I willing to live? Am I willing to be flexible? Willing to be a bit of a stoicist in that, like, I'd be willing to reduce my living expenses and feel that pain to get through not having to go to work. I want to share something when you were talking about just like being able to retire and that whole fear. I actually was going through this in January and February, and you said something valuable to me one night. We were on the phone at like 11 o'clock. I was driving. You said something like, what was it? It was people who get to this stage, right? Who have saved up this massive portfolio that's 300 times their monthly expenses. Let's just say hypothetically, at the 4% rule, de-engineered. If you've made it that far, you're the type of person who's likely going to survive, and you've likely thought through all the scenarios in your head. You're going to survive a downturn. You're going to survive whatever comes your way because you're adaptive, you're flexible, and you're the type of person who isn't afraid of hard work. I mean, it's like if they're financially independent, you already know they're a hard worker. There's no doubt. No matter how much they joke around and say like, hey, I'm just a chill guy. You know that if they got to this point that they're a hard worker, that they're intelligent. It's basically like a litmus test to determine if the person's, if they made it this far, then they're likely qualified enough to make it through
to keep
the rest
moving.
of it.
For sure. So, question number 9. All your friends are retired. Are you the only one in your social circle with still working? Ask yourself why it is, because you need a regular paycheck, or is there another more emotional reason? So in my opinion, I think this is both a really good and bad question, because it kind of is leaving the influence and control out of your hands, because it's dictating that you need to be following your social circle, which I don't overly agree with. But the counterpoint to that is, it is important to kind of have planned out how you're going to be socially engaging with all this new time that you're going to have, because a lot of people get a lot of their social engagement through work simply because they're spending a third of their waking hours there. So they do develop friendships and different social relationships there. So I get it, and I think it, like, for me personally, it's been a lot funner having people getting close to financial independence or joining me in financial independence now that I am financially independent. It definitely makes it more rewarding. I don't think it's inherently necessary, because you can always just expand your social circle.
I agree with you. I think it's getting at the deeper, better question to ask here, that this one's kind of poking at for me, is, are you emotionally prepared to take a jump into retirement? And part of that is your tribe or your social circle. Part of that is, are you ready to detach your identity and your ego from what you did for so long? For instance, I might have been known as a manager in IT consulting, and now I'm known as a retired guy who's doing real estate. That my whole family now perceives me differently than they did before. And see if you're emotionally prepared for that. Let's say you got the 4% rule, check. Okay, I'm financially ready. We know for sure that I have 300 times my monthly expenses. There's still a lot of other questions you have to ask yourself, and I think this is the piece that I wrestled with for a long time, because I was able to forecast pretty early on that I knew by a certain date I'd be able to reach financial independence. And then as you get closer to that date, in the last 6 months, for instance, for me, I had a lot of conversations with friends, yourself included, that were like, am I emotionally ready for this? Could I handle this? And these are all things that we could probably flesh out a good 10 questions just on that.
Yeah, no, because it is a big thing, and actually it's funny that I hadn't read through this quiz fully, but I actually discussed a lot of this in a video that literally came out today, the day we're shooting this, because if you go into the early retirement forums or deep into the subreddits, you're going to find all sorts of people that struggled with these existential questions as far as like, what's next and what does this mean to me as a person, and kind of what's the meaning of life, because often we're really able to use work and even the goal of financial independence as a great distracting mechanism to keep us from thinking about bigger and harder questions. And then all of a sudden you're left with all this free time and your mind just runs wild. So yeah, being emotionally prepared I think is really important. Planning to decompress I think is also important. And also just not being too hard on yourself is important too. You made the financial independence, like,
Yeah.
enjoy that.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, there's worse problems.
Yeah. Exactly.
So number 10, your job is affecting your health. So did you know that less than half of retirees left the workforce when and as planned? The rest retired earlier, 48%, or later, 6%.
Earlier.
Yeah, I retired earlier too, actually. Circumstances outside of their control. So I think that is interesting. Do you want to start with that?
Sure. My job took a huge mental strain on me. So this question I think should be there. If your job's affecting your health, I think from an emotional piece of that, are you ready to retire? It definitely does a good job at ticking that box. If you're enjoying your job, I have a friend I can think of specifically who really enjoys their job. And even when he's financially independent, I suspect he'll still be at his job working. Because he enjoys it, not necessarily because he has to be there, right? And when it's a choice every day, there's a different feeling or
completely having that. It's increasing your control of influence, which almost always, if you're taking responsibility for the situation, it's just always more. Every day you go to work is an active choice rather than an obligation. Part of the reason that I ended up leaving my job earlier than I originally planned was simply because the work environment had drastically changed and the expectations had drastically changed and my satisfaction with the work had drastically changed. And so I ended up kind of reaching a point where I wasn't I hadn't built up the perfect resilient plan that I had originally planned on for once I pulled the trigger for early retirement, but I was close enough. And I knew that I could figure out all the minutia once I was retired. And so partially for health or mental health, whatever you want to call it, I did decide to jump out a bit earlier than originally planned. So those are the 10 questions from the moneysense.ca article. I'd love to hear you guys' comments in the comment section down below. Let us know which questions do you think were useful, which ones do you disagree with, are we right, are we wrong? Let us know. And again, there'll be a link to this quiz in the video description down below. Otherwise, I think that's probably it for this video. Anything?
I just want to leave in a little tidbit. We're going to be doing these series on a weekly basis. So if you guys have any suggestions for topics, you want to send us an article and have us talk about it. Send us a topic, have us talk about it. That'd be great.
Because I think this makes for a great format and a little bit of variety. So if you got a blog post from some blogger, personal finance or otherwise, like send it to us if you want to hear our opinions on it. We'd love to dive into it. And give us the fuel. So we can let the fire burn. Alrighty, thanks again guys. I'm Matt McKeever.
And I'm Mike Rosehart.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.